Dear parent, have you ever walked away from what should have been a completely normal parenting moment and somehow felt emotionally drained, confused, or even slightly defeated, wondering how a simple decision turned into a full conversation, negotiation, debate, and emotional management exercise all at once? Many parents today are trying incredibly hard to raise thoughtful, emotionally aware children, and yet inside their homes, things can begin to feel strangely upside down without anyone realizing exactly when the shift happened. Maybe you notice yourself explaining decisions more than leading them. Maybe you find yourself avoiding conflict because everyone is already tired. Or maybe you quietly catch yourself thinking, how did my 8-year-old suddenly become the person influencing how this entire evening goes? If that sounds familiar, take a breath, because today we're going to slow this down together and talk about something I see happening in families every single week. Welcome back to the Path to Peace Therapy podcast. I'm Stephanie Buckley, parenting strategist and family systems coach, and both personally and professionally, my work focuses on helping families understand what is really happening underneath behavior, especially in homes where ADHD, anxiety, emotional intensity, or other forms of neurodivergence are part of everyday life. I've been married for over 3 decades, and together my husband and I raised a now thriving 23-year-old son with ADHD, which means the strategies I share here come not only from clinical frameworks, but also from lived experience inside my own home, combined with years of working alongside families navigating these exact dynamics. One of the primary frameworks I use is Bowen Family Systems Theory. Now that sounds academic, but the concept is actually very human. Bowen believed families function as emotional systems, meaning anxiety never stays contained in just one person. When stress increases anywhere in the family, everyone adjusts often without realizing it. Parents compensate, siblings adapt, partnerships feel strain, and sometimes children step into emotional roles they were never developmentally meant to carry. And honestly, one of the reasons I created this podcast is because I truly wish I could sit with every family navigating these struggles and help them understand what is unfolding inside their homes in real time. Since that simply isn't possible, this podcast provides supplemental tools that parents can revisit, reflect on, or even share with another caregiver so everyone begins understanding the same system together. Because when families understand the system they are living in, change becomes possible. Let me paint a picture for you, and as you listen, I want you to quietly ask yourself something. Is this happening in my house? It's a Tuesday night. Nothing dramatic. Nobody woke up planning conflict. You've already worked all day or managed schedules, responsibilities, laundry, emails, or the 1,000 invisible tasks parents carry that somehow nobody applauds. Dinner finally makes its way onto the table, and honestly, you're just hoping for one calm moment before bedtime begins. You set the plates down, and almost immediately someone says, "What is this?" Not aggressively, just enough resistance to slow everything down. Another child watches closely because children are incredible observers. They are constantly studying outcomes. You begin explaining why dinner was made because you're reasonable and cooperative. Parenting feels like the right thing to do. Then comes the follow-up question. Can I just have something else? Now suddenly you are negotiating food like it's an international agreement. Bedtime somehow enters the conversation, even though bedtime wasn't even mentioned yet. Someone reminds you yesterday was different. Someone else suddenly isn't hungry, but will absolutely need a snack later. And somewhere during this conversation, you notice something subtle but important happening. You are no longer leading the evening. You are managing reactions. And parents often laugh when I say this. But at some point, you realize you are explaining household decisions to someone who still cannot reliably locate their shoes in the morning. So what is actually happening here? In family systems psychology, we talk about something called hierarchy. Hierarchy simply means leadership responsibility inside the family system. It does not mean control or dominance. It means adults carry decision-making responsibility so children can focus on growing, learning, and developing emotional regulation safely. When hierarchy quietly shifts, children begin influencing emotional direction inside the home. Parents usually don't notice it happening because it develops slowly through small negotiations meant to keep peace. But here's the surprising part parents rarely hear. Children are not comforted by running their environment. Their brains are not ready for it. The developing brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex, which controls planning, impulse control, emotional regulation, and long-term thinking, is still under construction throughout childhood and adolescence. When children realize emotional intensity changes outcomes, their nervous systems experience unpredictability. Some children push harder, some melt down faster, some become controlling, and others become anxious. But underneath all of those behaviors is pressure. Imagine being 6 or 8 years old and realizing your reaction might determine whether dinner changes or bedtime moves. That sounds powerful from the outside, but neurologically, it feels unstable. Now, fast forward a few years. In middle school, this often becomes homework negotiations. Parents find themselves persuading instead of guiding. You might hear yourself saying, "Can we please just get this done tonight?" instead of calmly holding expectations. Then adolescence arrives and parents begin describing something very familiar: walking on eggshells, long debates about limits, emotional exhaustion after simple requests. Teenagers argue longer not because they are difficult, but because persistence historically influenced outcomes. And this is where Bowen Family Systems becomes incredibly important again. Anxiety inside families spreads. When leadership becomes unclear, everyone begins adjusting to reduce tension instead of creating stability. So what does leadership actually look like? Imagine that same dinner moment again. Complaint happens, resistance starts, and instead of explaining for 10 minutes, you calmly say, "This is dinner tonight. You don't have to like it, and you're allowed to feel disappointed." Then you sit down and continue eating. No lecture, no argument. Something fascinating happens neurologically. Predictability returns. The nervous system of the home settles because responsibility moved back where it belongs. If you're listening right now thinking, "Okay, this might actually be happening in our house," I want you to hear something clearly. Awareness is not blame. Modern parenting advice encouraged collaboration without always explaining developmental neuroscience or family system dynamics. Understanding the pattern gives parents relief and direction. So let me ask you honestly, are you leading your home or managing reactions inside it? Because children do not actually want to run the company. They want adults who can, and calm leadership lowers anxiety in the entire family system. This episode is for educational purposes and to provide support. It's not a substitute for professional mental health evaluation, diagnosis, or treatment. The more we learn to recognize the signs behind the behaviors, the more compassion and support we can offer to our kids, our partners, and ourselves. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this episode was helpful, I'd love it if you shared it with a fellow parent, caregiver, or educator who might need it too. You can subscribe to stay up to date on future episodes and check out additional tools and resources at thepath2peacetherapy.com. Follow me on Instagram at @thepath2peacetherapy. If you are in California, I offer virtual sessions if you are not in the Hermosa Beach and South Bay area, and you can book online at thepath2peacetherapy.com or email me at stephanieb@thepath2peacetherapy.com. And as always, take a deep breath, give yourself some grace, and remember, peace is possible, and you don't have to do this alone.